Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this advanced training class number 5. Today is September 3rd. Thank you for making an adjustment and joining on a Tuesday versus our normal Monday. Hope everybody had a great holiday weekend. And listen, I am really excited for our session here this morning. We have got a very, very special guest speaker, $150,000 ring earner, Mr. Bill Stovall, and we want to get to him just real quickly here. But again, just as a review, we've been going through the steps of the employee benefit system of success these past few weeks. Today's session is going to be on enrollments, but you can kind of see here on the screen just a review of these 5 steps, and you'll see this different ways from different people. But I've always kind of taught that step number 1 is you got to get a list of leads. You got to get some people to call, some businesses to call. Step number 2, you got to prospect those companies. And I know we've been doing a good job of that. Y'all have been reporting some incredible activity over the past few weeks, and it's time that we've been together on this training. Step number 3, and we talked about this at length a couple of weeks ago, is that decision maker meeting. And we talked about how do you go in and get a decision maker interested? How do you get on their side? How do you build a relationship with them? And ultimately, how do you get them to trust you to come in and talk to their employees? And how do you close that meeting? We talked about some of the language there, that you can use, and not just getting them interested, which is the easy part, but getting them to commit to an enrollment, which is a little bit harder. Today's topic is going to be kind of step number 4 of the system, which is the enrollment. And we're going to spend all day today talking about when you get in front of that group of employees. I always kind of considered that the fun part. This is your payday. This is where it all pays off. But how do you get the employees to sign up for it? How do you get them to commit? How do you get them to see the value and the benefit? How do you get them to say, this is something that I want for myself and for my family? So today's topic is going to be all about that, conducting a successful enrollment. And so again, we're just so privileged this morning to be joined by Mr. Bill Stovall. I will tell you this, Bill and I have been in the business for about the same amount of time. And I know, we've certainly seen each other throughout the years and never really did a whole lot of work together. But I went to a training that he did, it must have been 2 or 3 years ago now, at one of the big events. And this is a plug for Salt Lake City, because it's at events like that you get these types of experiences. But I went to a training that Bill did, and it resonated with me more than I think any training that I had ever seen. And then last year, almost a year ago, last fall, we had it wasn't really an event, but it was kind of a meeting that we went to in Dallas, and we were talking about training for LegalShield. And, ways that we could improve that training. And one of the things that happened, it was a 2-day meeting that we had, is that Mr. Stovall got up and he shared his sample enrollment. And I don't use these words lightly when I say that it was the best enrollment presentation that I've ever heard. I've been doing this for 17 years. It would not take a whole lot to beat my presentation, because I don't consider myself somebody that's got an A+ presentation, but I've heard some A+ presentations. I've heard some really good presentations, and I have no qualms in telling you that presentation that I heard Mr. Stovall do was just the best. I mean, he's so good at connecting with people, at relaying the benefits of the plan, and doing it in a way that people just feel comfortable. And so I've asked him to share that this morning. Now, he's going into an appointment here in less than 30 minutes, and so he was kind enough to drive there early this morning so that he could join us from his cell phone and be in a place where he could focus. And Bill, I appreciate you taking the time to do that. Now, I will say this. I hope that our folks are going to take some good notes, not just what he says, because he's going to present the same plan that everybody else presents. There's not a difference in the plan, but I hope you really pay attention to how he says certain things. And that's the stuff I take notes on is, okay, how did he say that? Where did he pause? Where did he emphasize certain words? Pay attention to that, because this is a presentation that has not only created a $150,000 a year income, but has sold thousands of memberships as well. Again, Mr. Stovall, I can't tell you how grateful we are for you taking your time out of your busy schedule to join us here this morning, and are really excited to hear just a sample presentation. So, folks, this is Mr. Bill Stovall. As if he were in front of a room full of employees, how would he do that presentation? And I'll turn the call over to you, my friend.
Oh, and before I get started, it is my pleasure to be on the call. And the admiration that I have for you and your team is at least equal to any that you might have for me as well. So I apologize for being on a car phone, or on my speakerphone in the car this morning. And as soon as I get done, I do have to run. So good morning. My name is Bill Stovall, and I'm very excited to be with you this morning. You have 2 brand new voluntary benefits that are available to you starting today. And I really want to thank Mr. Riches for making this possible, for making this available to you guys. And I hope that you are excited about the benefits, like I find that most people typically are. I do want to point out that these are voluntary benefits. So if this is something that you would like to participate in, you absolutely should. And if it's something you don't care to participate in, that is completely up to you as well. All of you should have gotten, when you first came in the room, we gave you a little folder that's got 2 forms in it. One of them is this one, and this is really just a cover sheet so you can sort of follow along with me as I go through it. Also, please note, down at the bottom, that's my contact information. If you ever need me for anything, don't hesitate. Just call me. That's my cell phone and my email address. Don't ask me any legal questions. I'm not going to know the answer to any of those. But otherwise, feel free to call me anytime. Just to ask me anything you'd like to about the benefit. This second form is actually an enrollment form. Now, this is a form I need to get back when I get finished, which is only going to take me typically 12 or 13 minutes to run through this. So when I get done, if this is something that you would like to participate in, you need to just fill out all the little highlighted areas and hand that back to me. I'm going to give you a temporary kit to get you started. And if it's something that you don't care to participate in, I still need to get the form back just because Mr. Riches needs a record, make sure of what everybody wanted to do. There may be a couple of you that want to give it some thought or talk to a spouse. That's absolutely okay. But Mr. Riches didn't want this, forms trickling in for the next 2 weeks. So I do need to go ahead and collect the form back. So if you are undecided that you think it probably will be something that you're participating in, go ahead and fill it out in its entirety. Just mention that to me when you do, and we'll write hold on yours and give you a couple of days. But I do need to get the form back from you before we get started or before we get done. So the 2 plans that you have, one is a legal plan, one is an identity theft plan. I'm going to go over to the legal plan with you, or a legal plan and identity theft plan. I'm going to go over to legal plan with you first. First off, who in here is married? Anybody married? Nobody seems real happy about it. That's okay. Really, it doesn't matter. The reason that I was asking who was married was just, for the most part, just to remind me, to remind you who's covered under the plan. The plan is not just for you. It covers you, spouse. It even covers your kids all the way up to age 26, never married, living at home, or if they're away at college up to age 26, never married, they would be covered under the plan as well. We do something a little bit unusual. We cover significant others. Sometimes people aren't married, but they've been living with the same person for a long time. And when it comes to benefits, maybe you don't get to count them because you're not technically married. We have no issue with that at all. We will include them at no extra cost on the legal plan, just as if you were married. Now, someone asked me a couple of days ago, what do you cover my significant other and my spouse? And no, I suppose you would have to pick your favorite if that happened to be you. So most people don't use lawyers very often. Why do you think that is? Right, the cost. The average cost for an attorney runs somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 an hour. So it's no wonder that people don't use attorneys very often. I guess wealthy people maybe do that. Somebody's using them because it seems like they're on every corner. But most people that I come into contact with, they really don't use attorneys, and I think it's just because of the cost of it. But that doesn't mean that we don't have issues. On average, statistically, we have a legal issue every, a couple of times a year. And I don't mean that we're committing crimes. I just mean it's something where an attorney would really come in handy, like maybe the landlord just decided not to give you back your deposit, or you've got a dispute going on with your neighbor, or maybe your parents have gotten older and you're trying to figure out how to navigate. Maybe one needs to be put in assisted living. And I heard something about a spin down. Are we going to be able to save mom's house? Or maybe we want to do some estate planning, or, an insurance company's not paying a claim. I could go on and on. There's a million reasons why we should use an attorney, but at $300 an hour, we Google it. We try to find the answers on our own. That really is what this entire legal plan is all about. No matter how trivial something is, no matter how traumatic something is, we don't even want you to think about money. Just pick up the phone, call your law firm, and talk to your attorney about it. So specifically, if you're following along with me on the form, over on the left in purple, and those are the things that the law firm, or that you get with your legal plan. First off, you get your own law firm. Now, here in North Carolina, your law firm is the same as mine. It's Merritt Webb. Merritt Webb's the 17th largest law firm in the state. We are the bulk of their business. So when you call them, the attorneys are quick to get on the phone with you, and you're never talking to a paralegal. So you can call and talk to your law firm about virtually anything you want to talk to them about. Now, you can't use it against this company. That wasn't Mr. Rich's. That's us, because that causes an obvious conflict of interest. But other than that, you can call and talk to them about child custody, credit matters, insurance claims, civil rights, speeding tickets, just about anything you want to talk to an attorney about. And again, never a paralegal, always an attorney, and you will never get a bill for doing that. And I've had this plan for 17 years, and so I've called them an awful lot, and most of the time, that really does it. That's all I need. Sometimes, though, I do need the attorneys. Unfortunately, I need to get them involved in things. And one of the things that they will do is they will write letters and they'll make phone calls on your behalf. I'll tell you a quick story. A little while back, we had gotten some ants. It was springtime, and we had noticed some ants in our kitchen. And we never had that problem in the past, so we didn't have any kind of relationship with a exterminator. So I Googled an exterminator. I found one. They came out and they said, yeah, we can get rid of the ants, but you'd be better off. Let's just go ahead and do a contract. We'll treat the whole house for everything. I said, yeah, that sounds fine. It wasn't too expensive. And one of the things that they did was they put rat poison under the house, which that's fine, but anyway, they put rat poison under the house. I didn't know that they would do that. And when they did, we've got a crawl space. They opened the crawl space door and they put the rat poison in a little metal tray. They set it about a foot past the door, and then they forgot to close the door. Now, we have a dog. Well, it's a Chihuahua. Some people don't call it a dog, and it wasn't. Don't judge me for that. That was my wife's idea, but we love her nonetheless. And you know where this story's going. Our dog went outside to use the bathroom, and she went straight under the house, unbeknownst to us, and ate all of the rat poison. Well, she got deathly ill. We didn't know what was wrong with her. Took her to the vet. She was there for a while. And to make a long story short, she survived. She lived. And then I got the bill, and I almost died. And so who do you think should have paid that bill? Me too, the owner of the pest control company. I called him, got him on the phone, believe it or not. Well, he made excuses. He argued with me. He blamed the veterinarian. And I said, you know what? I'm calling my lawyer. And he said, well, you do whatever you got to do, because he knows I'm not really going to call my lawyer. I mean, everybody says they're going to call their lawyer when they get angry. But my lawyer, just like yours, it's paid for. I called my attorney, and I was mad. And I called the attorney, and he said, slow down a minute. He started asking me questions. Well, one of the questions that the attorney asked was, what kind of container was this in? And I told him it was just in a little bit. He said, oh, no, that's illegal. He is lucky that wasn't a child. Hey, do you mind if I call him? I said, absolutely, that'll be fine. Here's his number. 45 minutes later, the veterinarian's office called, and they said, hey, this man just came in here and paid your bill. Again, I told him you already paid it, but he insisted because we had already paid it, because as it turns out, they don't give you back your dog unless you had paid it. Well, the reason that I tell you that is we all get treated unfairly from time to time. And I cannot begin to tell you how good it feels to see people's conscience suddenly come back and they do the right thing. So next time you get treated like that, just call your attorneys, ask them if they would write a letter on your behalf or maybe make a phone call on your behalf. And again, there's no charge for doing that. at all. They will also review an unlimited number of documents for you, up to 15 pages per document. They say what the bold print giveth, the fine print taketh away. So if you're not comfortable with something, or even if maybe you think you shouldn't be comfortable with something, shoot that over to your attorney and get them to take a look at it. That's included as well. One of the reasons that so many people participate in this plan, I believe, is because of estate planning. Everybody I've ever asked, do you think it's smart to get our estate planning done? They always say, absolutely. I know that we need to get a will, living will, things like that. But if you call a local lawyer and you say, I want to get my will done, my living will, my healthcare power of attorney, my durable power of attorney, they will be excited to help you, but they're going to most likely charge you more than $1,000 to do that. And so a lot of times, people get that price and they say, well, I want to do the right thing, but that's a lot of money, and I'm just going to be real careful not to die this month, and maybe next month I'll get that done. Well, this plan, it includes your will, living will, healthcare power of attorney, and durable power of attorney. It is super easy to do. In fact, this even comes with a smartphone app. The plan does. Both plans do. You can fill out a little questionnaire right on the app. And then your appointment with the attorney isn't even in person. You do the whole thing over the telephone, and then they custom create a will, living will, healthcare power of attorney, durable power of attorney. Turnaround time's about 5 days, and it is sent back to you with execution instructions at zero extra cost. This entire plan that I'm telling you about, you guys are paid weekly. A legal plan is only $5.53 a pay period or a week. And again, if you use this just to do your estate planning, I don't know how you couldn't come out on that financially. And for those of you that have a spouse or a significant other covered under the plan, we do their will at no charge as well. That's a complete separate will, and both wills would be updated as often as once a year, as long as you have the plan at no cost either. Who in here agrees that we pay too much for our car insurance? Yeah, we all do. I've got an 18-year-old male driver in a red Camaro. I pay too much for car insurance. Well, the last thing that we want to happen is to accidentally get a little speeding ticket or something. We all know what happens to our insurance if we do that. Well, by having the plan, you just simply, if you do accidentally get a ticket, you lay it on your lap as soon as the policeman drives off, take a picture of it, shoot it over to the law firm, and they will get a local lawyer to go fight the ticket in court for you nationwide. There are a couple of caveats. These are not criminal tickets like DWIs or driving so fast it's considered a criminal charge. These are just a regular run-of-the-mill traffic tickets, and you had to be in your personal car and it be properly licensed and insured and things like that. If you were to get audited by the IRS, you get up to 50 hours of a tax attorney's time to assist you with the audit. If you were to get sued, you get up to 60 hours of a trial defense attorney's time. Most of that time's for actual trial time. If you were to go through a divorce, separation, adoption, a name change, as long as you can keep it uncontested. In other words, honey, let's agree to disagree so we don't give half our money to attorneys. They can handle a divorce, separation, adoption, and a name change at no additional cost, all included in that $5.53 a week for your plan. Unfortunately, and obviously, we can't cover every type of legal situation that might come up. So there's some things that fall outside, like a filing for bankruptcy or a DWI, criminal charges, things like that. But even those things, you get to talk to the attorney at no charge, documents reviewed, letters written. But if you need to hire the attorney maybe to go to court for a teenager on a criminal traffic ticket, then you would still be entitled to a preferred member discount, which is 25% off of regular hourly rate. And you can even call the law firm 24/7 if you've got some type of an emergency. Like, my wife was in a pretty bad car accident. She was hit by a drunk driver, and she was at a stoplight, and it was after hours. I was 10 minutes away. By the time I got there, the police were on the way. The ambulance was on its way. She seemed okay. And I thought, well, I'll call my attorney. And the attorney said, hey, you're close to some businesses. Scout around and take pictures of everything, and then scout around and ask if anybody might have got video. And sure enough, somebody got a video of the drunk driver who claimed not to be drunk getting out, falling down and stumbling, that we got that video because of talking to the attorneys after hours. So you can call them 24/7 when you've got an emergency. So that is the legal plan. Who in here has been hearing a lot about identity theft lately? Yeah, it was the same people that got married, which is odd, but nonetheless, a lot of people have been hearing about it. Most notably in the news of late are all these data breaches. It seems like every time we turn around, there's another one. Not too long ago, we had that huge, biggest one in world history, I think, the Equifax breach. That was over 150 million names, birth dates, social security numbers. I think that's more than likely that one breach was everybody in this room. A year or so before that, we had the Blue Cross Anthem breach. It was over 80 million names, birth dates, and social security numbers. Now, why would somebody steal 1 million plus names, birth dates, and social security numbers? They can't use that many. Well, they're going to sell them. I do some talks about identity theft in general and do some seminars and things. And so I could speak intelligently about it. I went, I kept hearing this stuff is for sale on the dark web. So I Googled, well, how do you get on the dark web? And I was amazed how easy it was to do that. And so I got on, I'm not advocating doing that, but I went and I started looking for places to buy identities. And I found store after store after store. And so I started moving through the process, and I found this person selling them. It's a lot like Amazon or eBay. I put 50 identities in my shopping cart. The person I would have been buying them from, he had reviews from the people that had come before me saying they had gotten great identities and made a killing with them. And of course, I didn't check out. I would have had to use digital currency like Bitcoin or something. But what surprised me was the cost. They were $7 a piece. And these are the things that have caused identity theft to get so bad. When I first started doing this, I remember standing in front of the room saying, "You're not going to believe this." There were 340,000 victims of identity theft last year, and the room would go, "Oh my gosh." And here we are 15 years later, and I'm standing in front of the room saying, "You're not going to believe this." 16 million people got their identity stolen last year. And it has to be because of what I've been talking about. It's all of these data breaches. Our stuff is everywhere, and it's out there. And the average person spends countless hours trying to fix this. It's very difficult to make those phone calls where they say, "Ma'am or sir, I completely understand, but according to our computer, it says you owe the money," or "it says this was you." And contrary to popular belief, most identity thefts are not even about credit. It's things like you go to file your income taxes only to find out somebody beat you to it and they took your refund. Or you find out that somebody's working a job in your name, or that you are been drawing disability for the last 6 years and you didn't know it because you weren't getting the check. And this stuff is just really difficult to fix. So ID Shield, not included with the legal plan. You can look there at the bottom. ID Shield is $2.65 a week or a pay period. If it's just you, or if you're married or significant other or children, it's $4.37. But what we do is we of course, we will give you credit monitoring, and that's the least of what we do. You can get credit monitoring in all kinds of places. But instead of just credit monitoring, which is really important, we monitor everything that is humanly possible to monitor, not the least of which we monitor dark web traffic, looking for your information to be somewhere that it shouldn't be. We monitor social media accounts. We monitor Payday Loan Center Association. We monitor criminal databases. We monitor everything we possibly can so that you get alerted when your information is, even maybe before it's misused, just when it might be in the wrong place. But the big deal with this is, if you do fall victim to identity theft, it is not going to be your job to fix it. You get licensed investigators to step in on your behalf, and they are the ones who are dealing with the cell phone company, the IRS, the DMV, the credit bureaus, the power companies, or whomever it is, until you are put back to the way you were. Even included in this is $1 million insurance policy to reimburse you for any money that you might lose. So up to $1 million. I don't think that there is a more well-rounded, better plan offered anywhere, and you're not going to find, you can find virtually no plans at this rate. And one of the reasons you've got this rate is because Mr. Rich has allowed us to come in and you've got our group rates on that. So you get incredible monitoring, and then you get complete restoration in the event that something like a terrible thing like somebody's using your identity theft would happen. Now, again, just to go over the payroll deduction, it's $5.53 a week for the legal plan. For the family, for ID Shield, it's $437 if you're following along with me on your form, or if it's just you, it's $265. Now, what a lot of people do is they want to get both plans, which is fine. This is up to you. We do discount it if you do that. So the family rate would only be $8.98 for both plans, or $7.59 if it's just you. So anyway, that's your plan. Now, if you would, that second form, remember I need to get that form back from everybody. And if you look right at the top, you want to start with today's date. And what is today's date? Right, the 3rd. Go ahead and write that in, and then I just walk them right through the form, and that's it.
Wow, I love it, Mr. Stovall. Thank you so much. I know you've got an appointment you've got to run into. Thank you for taking the time to join us here this morning and to share that. That was fantastic.
It was my pleasure, and I will talk to all of you soon, and best of luck to all of you. Great, great, great business.
Awesome. Mr. Stovall, thank you again for sharing. Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
And what I'd like to do here, folks, is let's use the question panel on our webinar service. I'd love to have you give some feedback. What stood out to you in that enrollment presentation? Was there a line that he said? Was there something that he did? What was it about his presentation that stood out to you? And then I'm going to share with you a couple thoughts, and then I want to go through those, and we'll just kind of use that to communicate with each other here this morning. But again, if you'll just type into the question panel if there was anything in particular that stood out to you, then I'd love to read those and go through. I took a page and a half of notes myself, and I've been doing this for a while, so I hope that you got some good notes as we went through that. I'm gonna go through and start sharing here. Chuck McGee talks about he used levity and humor really well, which I totally agree with. There were several lines. Now, I will say this. I'll preface this by saying humor is not everyone's strength. And there are some people that they try to use humor, but it has an opposite effect because they're not really humorous. So part of a presentation is you got to know your strength. Your strength. You can't go be Bill Stovall. Not everyone is going to be Bill Stovall. You can still have an outstanding presentation, even if you do it differently than others, just by focusing on what your strengths are. But having said that, Chuck, I agree 100%. He had several lines that I wrote down. He talks when he was sharing a story about the ants and the exterminator. Said the dog almost died, and then I got the bill and I almost died. That was a great line. He had several that were really funny. He talked about, talked to somebody that they said, spouse, can I cover my spouse and my significant other? No, not really. So, he took situations that were very real and pertinent and relevant, and he did turn them into humor, which is a great way to kind of keep people involved. I like Mike Scott mentioned here how he got everyone filling out the form before it became a question. I wanted to talk specifically about that. And again, part of what we're discussing here this morning is what can work in an enrollment. If you were to line up 100 top producers in LegalShield, there are certain things that they're all going to have in common, but things like closing enrollment, there are going to be differences, and that's totally fine. Bill asked me when I asked him to share that last week, he asked me, he said, I typically use that, I call it a hold close. So go, everyone fill out your form, and then if you want to think about it, just let me know and we'll write hold on it. And I like that close. He asked me when I asked him to do this, he said, do you want me to share that? And I said, yes, I want you to share exactly what you do in an enrollment because that's what we want to hear. But that was how he did it. Now, you notice he hit that right in the very beginning. He talked about this form and he got them familiar with the form. He said, I'm going to have everybody fill out this form today. If you want to go home and think about it, he used the phrase, that's absolutely okay. I'm still going to have you fill out the form. And you notice he went back to kind of the decision maker. Now, part of what you didn't see is he would have needed to have that conversation with the decision maker beforehand, which Bill does, in order to be strong on that. Oops, I'm doing the wrong thing here. Okay, here we go, back to our panel. But because he set that up with the decision maker, he's able to use that as part of his close. Everybody needs to fill out the form today. We don't want these trickling in over the next couple of weeks. Marguerite pointed out that he covered the objections right away, which I think is important. Now, I hope you noticed he overcame several objections. He overcame, do I need an attorney? Am I ever going to use this? All of those common objections that he would normally face. What about the objection of the company? Can we use this against the company? He overcame that. He talked about, let's see what else here. I'm looking through my own notes. Will I ever become a victim of identity theft, or why do I need identity theft protection? He covered that really well in talking about the different types of identity theft. If someone came in that room thinking, I don't need identity theft protection, and then listened to Bill, they would have thought about this differently. And that's why he signs up so many people. 80% of people don't pay for protection right now for their identity. So 80% of people are justifying not having identity theft protection, in other words. And he helped expand their mind a little bit. He got them thinking that this is bigger than they may have thought. Of course, his example with the dark web helped do that as well. And so I agree, Marguerite, 100%. Jennifer Herndon points out he was straight to the point. It was not long. There was no fluff. And she points out the real world examples stood out to her. Jennifer, I agree 100%. His stories were very good. We're going to talk about having a great story this morning. His stories were very good and on point. They were not long. They didn't, he didn't share too many details. The story about the dog and the poison, I assure you that there are 10 minutes of details that he could have put in that story. Why he got the dog, how old the dog was, where the vet was. I mean, there are all kinds of story or details that he could have shared about that story, but he didn't. It was short, it was relevant, it was to the point, and it was powerful. And I agree. And his whole presentation was that way. Here's why. It's a polished presentation. And Bill hit it right on the head. There were a couple of times where he dropped the line, where his phone went out, which I don't know why that happened, but that is what happens in an enrollment. Obviously, it's not by phone, but you're going to have some kind of distraction. Something happens, and you got to kind of bring everybody back in. And he said that. That's exactly right. I mean, very few enrollments just go perfectly. So you got to be ready for that. Now, the good thing about Bill is he's been doing this long enough and he's practiced enough that he didn't really have to focus on what he was saying. He knew what he was going to say because it's just routine to him now. It's kind of like when you stand up and say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And to the republic, what comes next? For which it stands. You don't really have to think too much about that because it's rote memory. It just kind of comes out. That's how his presentation is. And because he's gotten to that point, he can focus on how he's saying certain things instead of what he's necessarily going to say. So Jennifer, I agree with that. Yvonne points out he made it sound just like a warm conversation rather than a presentation. And Yvonne, I could not agree more. I think that's one thing that I really liked about his presentation when I heard it last year is that it was very warm, very conversational, very relaxed. And there were certain times, I don't know if anybody picked up on this, but there were certain times where he intentionally slowed down, even though he was running short on time. And that was, actually a little bit fortuitous that he had an appointment right at 11 o'clock Central Time because he was coming up against that wall that he knew he needed to close. Well, that's how it is in a presentation too. When you've been talking for 13, 14 minutes, you got to close. Like you got to get to the close. And yet he didn't rush his voice. He was intentionally slowing down at certain parts, even though in reality, he kind of did have to hurry. It's better to cut something out than to hurry through everything that you feel like you need to say. Yvonne, great point. She also points out here the questions that he asked, and I made a note of some of those questions. He said, who agrees that we pay too much for car insurance? That's a good participation question. He started by saying, who's married? And then he went back when he got into identity theft, and another area where he used some humor there. He said, how many of you, let's see, who's been hearing a lot about identity theft? And, oh, it looks like some of the same people who are married. That's interesting. Just kind of breaking up the ebb and flow of the conversation, getting people back focused, using some humor to do that. He asked, where was that one? Oh, why do you think people don't use attorneys more often? And that's another question that I found is very safe. So Yvonne, that's a great point. He did ask very good questions, enough questions to keep people involved, but none of those questions would give away control of his presentation. And that's what you have to learn how to do. Ask great questions. Great questions are ones that get people involved, but you don't lose control of your presentation. You know, versus he could have said, anybody in this room ever been a victim of identity theft? And that would have been a similar question, but not as good of a one. Number one, he could have no hands. I've asked that a few times in a presentation. It's not a good question to say who in here has been a victim, because if nobody raises their hand, it backfires, and they say, well, I guess it's not a big problem. You know, you can't have nobody raise their hand and then say this is huge, everybody's getting hit. Or you have someone raise their hand and then they tell a 10-minute story about how they became a victim, 9.5 minutes of which are not important, and now you don't have any time to get into your presentation. So what made Bill's questions great were that they were relevant, they were to the point, and they got interaction without losing control. That's what makes a great question. Valerie points out his opening. We have 2 brand new voluntary benefits available today. I love that opening, and I love how he said these are voluntary, meaning that if you see value in them, we want you to sign up, and if you don't, then that's fine. That helps kind of break down the force field that people have up. They have, you know, most people when they come in, they have a wall built. They don't know you, they don't trust you, and that helped just break that down immediately. I agree, Valerie. I thought that was a great opening. Tracy points out again his casualness, his realism were very good. Seralta points out, oh yeah, taking the form home to speak of the spouse. We talked about that already. Chuck points out, I like the way he described his discussion with his attorney. I agree, Chuck. I thought that was fantastic. He said twice in there too, my attorney, same attorney you use, same law firm you use. And that's good because it puts you on the level of the employees. And that's something that's kind of an art. How do you get on people's level? And I like how he said that twice. You know, your law firm, same law firm I use. I thought that was great. Seralta says how he has to collect the forms today, even if they're not interested. I agree 100%. I'm just reading through these. I like how Chuck points out here, and I agree. You notice he never said $23.95. He never said this legal plan is $23.95 a month. What did he say? It's $5.53 a week. And all that is it's easier for somebody to make a $5 decision than a $25 decision. That's it's the same amount. If you take $5.53 times 12, and then, times 52 rather, and then divide it by 12, then you get $23.95. It's the same amount, but he's just talking about a smaller number. And I wrote down here too how I call that stair-stepping the cost. So you notice now this is something that is different with different people. Some people will say it's $8.98 a week for both plans for a family, and that's the number that they choose to focus on. Bill is doing it where he says, okay, the legal is $5.53, and then it's this much more to add the identity theft. And that's called stair-stepping the cost, where he gets people to make a $5 decision, and then he gets them to make a $3 decision on the identity theft. And that's easier than getting them to make a $9 decision. So again, I'm not saying that's the only way to do it, but I thought it was interesting that that's how Bill does it. Other people would say it's just $8.98 a week for both plans and just kind of sell that double rate. Both work, but they are two different approaches. Shanita asks, how do you secure the decision maker approving, saying everyone needs to complete the form? And that's a great question. Again, that's a conversation that he's got to have with that decision maker beforehand. Now, I can tell you what he says in that to the decision maker. He says, now here's what we normally do, is we'll have everyone fill out the form. Wouldn't you agree that's better, even if they don't want it, it's better to have them just fill it out and make a decision then versus having those forms trickle in for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Wouldn't you agree? That's his language to the decision maker to get them to agree to do that. But again, that is set up beforehand. It's set up before the enrollment. You can't go in and use that close that Bill used if you have not set that up in advance. And so, Shanita, that's a great question. I'm glad that you pointed that out. Yvonne points out she loved how he emphasized the fact that he's available for contact after this event. And she says that would give listeners a feeling of comfort that he's not just there for the moment. This is not you gonna see me, I'm here today, gone tomorrow type of deal. I love that too. I thought the exact same thing when he gave us contact information. It's on the brochure that he's using. Please call me. Again, use a little bit of humor there. He said, now don't ask me legal questions because I won't know the answer. What he's doing is he's foreshadowing there because he's about to talk about having access to the attorneys as well. But it did make him feel more human. Not just a salesperson coming in. He's someone that cares and is there to help. I agree. Senora pointed out great flow. He added a few jokes, gave examples of how he used the service, said how he said, fill out the form whether you want it or not, get back within 2 days. Shanita points out here, and I agree, I think we've covered a lot of that. I'm just reading these as live as we go through. Shanita had a great question again on that hold close. And excuse me, I've got to keep myself hydrated. You might hear, folks, I've got a little bit of a head cold that I'm getting over here, so I apologize. But if you're going to use that hold close, here's how you do it. And I want to be real clear on this. You tell them, go ahead and fill it out, write hold on the top if you want a couple days. And if you decide not to do it, just call me before Friday or before Monday or before, give them a couple days. Just call me and then I won't process your form. And if you decide to do it, don't worry about calling me. Because if I don't hear from you by Friday, then I'll assume that you want to do it and I'll send it in. And that is how you do the hold close. Never, ever, 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 I want you to hear me. Never, ever, ever say, I'll call you before I process this. Because I can assure you, if you say that, you will never get a hold of that person. I mean, that is how it works. They will join the witness protection program. You will never be able to get them on the phone again if that's your agreement. And what you end up there with is a form that you can't really do anything with. You can't destroy it because maybe they do want it and you can't process it because you don't know. Maybe they don't want it. So again, the way that you do that with the hold close is we'll write hold on it. If you decide in the next couple of days, give them a date. Like today's Monday, I might say Wednesday. Or today's, I guess, Tuesday. Never mind. I might say Thursday or Friday. Give them a couple of days. And if you decide not to do it, just call me. And I won't process your form. And I've used that close a lot. It does work. You do get a few calls. You get a few people. Like I just did it last month in an enrollment. I had one hold at the end, and she did call and say, don't process it. I already have it through my husband's work. Okay, no problem. But most of the time, the majority of them don't call. And all it's doing is it's taking someone who's they want to do it, but they're just afraid of committing, and it's giving them an out, which is usually all they need, and then they end up doing it anyway. Very rarely will you get a lot of calls on that. You do get some. But the majority of them do end up keeping the plan, but it just makes them feel a little bit better. So I love that. Valerie says, I love the prep statements of exactly what he's going to be covering. He did set that up very, very well in the beginning. They all had the form with the prices on it already. So there was no question about the price. Again, I like that, and I agree 100%. I know Stephanie Panchishan does that in her enrollments as well. She's got the price down at the bottom of the form with a little sticker that she prints and puts that on there so that she can just refer them to that price. Jim Ryman talks about the way that he used data breaches, and I agree. That was very real, very relevant. He's bringing in news stories to keep it relevant. Seralta mentions that he spoke as an expert, and I totally agree. And you could hear his confidence in that. Now, that was one of those things, they say sometimes fake it till you make it. I had to fake it till I made it. I was not super confident when I got started. I had to fake that a little bit. But the reality is, if you've been through this training course, you know more about these plans than the people that you're talking to. If you've been through our online training or any certification class, you know more than the people that you're talking to. So don't be afraid to be an expert. Don't be afraid to have that confidence and speak like you know what you're talking about. You do know what you're talking about. I like Yvette points out that he personalized the plan. He talked about what they will have instead of what they could have. And I agree, just a little tweak in language there versus saying one thing that you could have as a member, one thing that you do have, or one thing that you will have as a member is good. I like how Valerie points this out. When he got to restoration, I made this note as well. He said the big deal with this is, and then he went on to explain the restoration. And that was a term that he emphasized, the big deal with this. I agree. Jennifer Stovall points out a great question, and it was kind of a rhetorical question, but when he got to talking about data breaches, he said, why would a thief steal 1 million names and socials and things like that? They can't use them all. And the answer is, yeah, they sell them. So it's kind of rhetorical. He's not pausing there and waiting for someone to answer. There are probably going to be some people that will say that. He's just trying to get them to think a little bit, but I agree. That was a great rhetorical question. And then she points out the transition from legal to identity theft. It was smooth. It was quick. He did pause in that transition. I don't know if you caught that, but there was a short pause, maybe a second and a half or 2 seconds, to kind of get people back focused on him again, to let them know, hey, we're going to transition here. That's important because obviously most presentations we're going to cover both plans, but people's minds ebb and flow all the time. So they're focused on you right now, then they're not going to be focused. And they're focused on you, and then they're not going to be focused. And so you do need to have some kind of break between the plans. And that's one reason why I like using the trifold brochures. Just the process of taking out a second brochure breaks it up and gets people back focused on you again. But he paused there, and that's important because he got people focused back on him before he shifted gears and went into a new plan. Otherwise, if you go through that too quickly, and I agree with Jennifer, it was a very smooth, and it did not take a long time, but there was a pause. If you don't break that, if you don't pause there, or if you don't somehow break it up, people, they lose you because they're thinking about, you talked about divorce, and then all of a sudden they come back to you, you're talking about a data breach, and they're like, what does this have to do with an attorney? Or vice versa. If you started with the identity theft, you're talking about identity theft and how bad it is, and then all of a sudden you're talking about wills for your family, and people don't follow that. So that pause was really important in his transition. Again, somehow you've got to be able to get people back focused on you. Now we're shifting gears. One phrase that I use a lot is I'll start with the identity theft, and then I'll say, now let's shift gears. We're going to talk about the legal plan. Now, I want to be clear. This is not just for victims of identity theft. This is any legal question that you have. And that's kind of my way to get people back focused that we're talking about something different. Valerie talks about how he addressed their fears and objections. Again, I totally agree with that. Well, Keither talks about his story sounded relatable to the audience that he was presenting the information to, and I totally agree. Shanita mentions that he kept referring back to me. I mean, obviously, in this example, I was the decision maker. And I agree. I think he did a really, really good job of referring back to me. Lloyd asked whether he's using a one-page app or a two-page. I don't know because he just went to the date. So I don't know. I don't know what he's using on that at all. But anyway, great feedback, guys. I appreciate that, and I really appreciate Bill sharing that. You go back through my notes. I think we covered most things here. I did like the examples. I don't know if you caught that. This is something that I learned to do early on, is when you, right at the beginning of your legal, you've got to give some real life examples. The 4 that he used is if you have a problem where a landlord, doesn't want to give you back a deposit, or maybe you have a dispute with your neighbor. That was number 2. Maybe your parents are getting older and you've got some questions about how to take best care of them. Maybe you need to look at assisted living or a spin down. I don't know what a spin down is, but I jotted it down. That's the term that he used. And I think that that's somewhat effective because most people in that room everyone either knows what it is or doesn't know what it is. If they know what it is, then he's speaking to them and he's connecting with them. If they don't know what it is, that can be effective too, because now they're saying, maybe I should know what that is. I need to take care of my parents. And then the 4th example was estate planning. And I loved how he said, I've never, or anyone that I've ever asked, do you think it's smart to get your estate planning done? They say, absolutely it is. That was another great way, just kind of being relatable. So great feedback, guys. And again, I want to thank Mr. Bill Stovall for sharing that. Here is my invitation to you this week, is I am looking for some people that would like to present. I'd like to have 1 or 2 people present an enrollment presentation on this training next week. And actually what I'd like to do is get one person to do a decision maker meeting, kind of a sample decision maker meeting, and I can role play with you on that. And then I'd like one person to do a sample enrollment, just like we heard Bill Stovall just do. But if I could get someone to, or I'm looking for volunteers, and so what I'm going to ask you to do is email me, mike@mikeriches.com. And we won't have time for everyone, but we will have time for one of each. And I would like to, now here's the deal. If you volunteer, you're volunteering not just to be praised, but you're volunteering to be critiqued. The thing with hearing a presenter like Bill Stovall is there's not much critiquing there. He's really good. He's polished that for 17 years. Most people are not where Bill Stovall is at with their presentation. But sometimes I've learned this, we can learn more from critiquing a presentation and pointing out things that are good and things that need to be improved. And that can be a really positive learning experience for everyone. Definitely for the person presenting, but it opens up some great discussion points that we can all benefit from. So what I'm looking for there is someone who's brave, that doesn't mind being coachable and teachable and humble, and putting themselves out there to be critiqued a little bit. And again, just email me at mike@mikeriches.com. I'm looking for someone to do a decision maker meeting, a sample decision maker meeting, and someone to do a sample enrollment presentation next week. I wanted to go over just some general tips on enrollment. And let me tell you what I'm hoping to do here with the last hour that we have together. I would like to cover some tips that I want to share in the next 30 minutes. And then we have a recorded presentation by Rachel Lawton that I would love to close today with. It's an 18-minute presentation. She was not able to join us live because she had an appointment. She had 2 appointments this morning back to back that she wasn't able to join us, but she emailed me and said, hey, I've got a recorded presentation. It's a presentation that I use for one of my groups. But, and she said, I'd be happy to have you show that on your webinar. And so I'm going to, as long as we have time, and I hope that we do, then I would like to play that. If we don't, then I'll start next week with that, but I hope that we can get to it today. Some of you are saying, well, Riches, if you just go ahead and shut up, then we would get to it. And that's a valid point, and I will accept that with humility. Let's talk about some of these general enrollment tips. I often talk about in an enrollment, and this is really the same thing with the decision maker as well, that you need to connect with thinkers and feelers. With a decision maker, because it's only one person, you can kind of identify whether they're a thinker or a feeler. And thinkers are just people that make logical decisions or decisions based on logic. In other words, does it make sense? And feelers make emotional decisions. So in other words, they make buying decisions based on how they feel when they hear a presentation. And most people are feelers. I don't know what the breakdown there is, whether it's 80-20 or 75-25 or 70-30, but the majority of people are feelers. Now, that can change based on the industry as well, because you could walk into most groups and it might be 75% of the people are feelers. They make emotional decisions, and only 25% are thinkers. You could go into an engineering or an architect office and be the exact opposite. In fact, it might be 95% of them are thinkers. So it does depend on the industry a little bit. One thing that Abby Parker talks about in the training, and for example, this is at the training that we're going to do in Salt Lake City, she'll break down a decision maker conversation and how to identify kind of their personality type, and then also how to shape your meeting to fit that personality. But so with a decision maker, because it's only one person, you can usually identify if they're a thinker or a feeler and then just speak to them. The thing with an enrollment is you've got both. In almost every group that you have, you're going to have thinkers and you're going to have feelers. Again, probably more feelers than thinkers, but the key is that you want to connect with them both. Well, thinkers, people that make a logical decision, they're pretty easy to connect with. You just have to justify the price. You have to show them that this plan does not cost money. This plan saves money. And you heard Bill do that in his presentation. He talked about how the will is going to save him over $1,000. And that's a great part to do that, because again, it's such an easy value to see, to perceive, that they're going to start. And I like how he said it. He said, now, you can call an attorney. They'll be happy to help you get a will. They're going to charge you $1,000. But with LegalShield, you can get that done for free. And that's connecting with a thinker. That's a great way to justify the price. He also said several times, he talked about not having to pay $300 an hour. Another way to connect with thinkers. He was establishing value, justifying the price, and I think he did an excellent job of showing that this was a plan that people would save money with, not spend money on. Thinkers are, in my opinion, are easier to connect with. Where we struggle sometimes is connecting with feelers. Feelers are not as easy to connect with. It's not as organic. It's not as natural. And I'll say this, gentlemen, we have a harder time with it, because you can see the first bullet point there. One way that you can connect with emotional decision makers, with these quote unquote feelers, is to use emotional language, to use words and phrases that convey emotion. And guys, we just tend not to do this very naturally. Most guys are not going to stand up and talk about a bunch of touchy-feely stuff. It's easier for us just to kind of go talk about how this makes financial sense. And, we kind of go to that thinkers. But the problem is you cut out a large portion of your audience by only focusing on the value. And I want to teach you how to connect with everyone in the audience. Everyone, at least everyone that could say yes. And that's kind of the goal here. Every enrollment presentation that you do, if you meet with, let's say, 20 people, you'll probably have one or two that they'll buy it no matter what. I mean, they could hear a horrible presentation, but they came in thinking that they wanted to sign up. I'm just kind of talking on average here, but one or two, they're going to buy it no matter what. And 3 or 4 out of 20, it doesn't matter what you say, they're not going to buy it. I mean, that's, again, most of the time. There are exceptions, of course, where you have 100% or 0%. But in most presentations, if you got 20 people, 1 or 2, they're going to buy it no matter what. And 3 or 4, they're not going to buy it no matter what. You could tell them, hey, look, everyone that signs up today gets a free Corvette. They're still not signing up. I'll give you $100,000 cash. They won't budge. I mean, for whatever reason, they're not going to sign up. The middle ground there is who we're really talking about. And that's where having not just a good presentation, but a great presentation, you want to get the majority of that middle ground. You want to get as many of those people, and I won't call them fence sitters, although you could, but fence sitters, to me, that's somebody who at the end is having a hard time making a decision. And you'll get some of those as well. The middle ground, they'll be swayed either in or out, yay or nay. They're going to be swayed by your presentation. And again, I mean, what we're talking about here is just a way to get as many of those as possible. And again, some of those are thinkers, some of those are feelers, so you got to connect with both. When I say emotional language, one thing that I do in my live trainings is I have people take out a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. And on the left, I have them write with LegalShield, and on the right, I have them write without LegalShield. And I give them a few seconds, and I say, I want you to come up with as many words or phrases that describe how you feel on the left side of the paper. How many words and phrases can you come up with that describe how you feel having this plan? Being a LegalShield member, how does that make you feel? And I give them a few seconds, and they write down, and then we shout out answers. And the goal in doing that is to get have everybody kind of have a long list, or at least a good-sized list of emotional words and phrases. And then I say on the right, how would you feel if you didn't have this anymore? If Jeff Bell called you and said, hey, we're canceling your plan. We're not doing this to anybody else, but we're just you. We're canceling your plan. You no longer have LegalShield. How would that make you feel? And so on the left, we have phrases like safe, secure, empowered, peace of mind, smart, intelligent, wise. Trying to think of some others that when we do that in front of a group, we get 15, 20 of them. Knowledgeable. I think I might have already said that. Now I'm having a brain freeze here. On the right, we end up with phrases like exposed, fearful, phrases like angry, mad. I'd be mad if Jeff Bell called me and told me that. Frustrated, unempowered, insecure, unsafe, and on and on and on. And you could do that exercise. You could come up with as many of those as you could. But the reality is we have to do a better job of using language like that in a presentation. We just have to. I think that a great presentation, and you heard this with Bill, he used that emotional language, kind of sprinkled it throughout his presentation. A great presentation has 10 or 15 of those emotional words and phrases. And most people, unless they're intentional about it, most people in their presentation use maybe one or two. And yet you heard Bill convey that emotion throughout his presentation. Why? Because it's polished. And that's something that you have to go intentionally do, is use that emotional language. And again, gentlemen, for us, it's got to be intentional, because it's not going to come as naturally. We don't tend to talk about that touchy-feely stuff as much as our female counterparts may, but even ladies, I'm telling you, most people, they don't use enough unless they're intentional about it. So take some of those words and phrases and go add them into your presentation. Don't hesitate to talk about how that made you feel, how frustrated you were when you got that bill from your whatever, or when that repair person didn't give you a fair shake, or whatever it is. Talk about how frustrated and angry that made you, and how empowered you felt when you got that the letter from the law firm. How did that make you feel? Just using some of that emotional language will help you connect more with those feelers. And then finally, the last bullet point here, facts tell and stories sell. Stories are one of the best ways to convey emotion and to connect emotionally with these people that are making an emotional decision. And that's why, like, you can turn on any commercial on TV, and most of them, they're using emotion. And that's why we end up with a garage full of tools that we never use or a kitchen full of gadgets that we never use, because most of us are emotional decision makers and we bought it based on how we felt, not logically asking, is that a purchase that I really should make? And I'm not trying to equate our legal plan and identity theft plan to gadgets and tools, but I am equating the buying process. And again, most people are going to buy based on how they feel. So make sure that your stories are like Bill's, that they're short, that they're to the point, that they're relatable. And that's why I love that story about the exterminator and the Chihuahua. Now, I don't have a Chihuahua, so I do have a dog, and I guess maybe people could connect there, but I like the story because it's not outlandish. It's not outside of the realm of what we would consider normal. That's why it was a great story. And I love how he said, now, who do you think should pay that bill? I love how he brought it home. And he got everyone in that room on his side on this thing. And people are thinking, yeah, he got treated unfairly. That's not right. That's what made it such a great story. So make sure that your stories are polished too. I always recommend type out your stories verbatim. And then what it allows you to do is two things. If you'll take time to actually type out your stories, and it'll take you a few hours, because you want to do this with 4 or 5 stories. You want to have 4 or 5 stories in your repertoire. You won't share all 4 or 5 in every presentation. But I guarantee Bill has 2 or 3 stories that he did not share, that if he was in front of a different audience, maybe he would change it up and share a different story. But great presenters, they've got, and I should say top producers, they've got 4 or 5 stories in their repertoire, arrows in their quiver that they can pull out at any time. And if you'll take the time to really go through those and type them out verbatim, it'll allow you to do 2 things. Number one, go through and edit out, take out every detail that's not 100% pertinent to your story. But number 2, it'll allow you to go in and add some emotional language too. And put some of those words intentionally in there that describe feelings that will help you connect with those emotional decision makers a little bit better. Okay, next point here. We already talked about asking great questions. I'm including here on the screen a few examples that I've used in my presentation. And again, we've already talked about this a little bit. What makes a great question is it does get people interacting, but does not give away control of your presentation. And so questions here like, how many of you, by a show of hands, have ever known someone who was a victim of identity theft? Again, that's better than asking how many of you have been a victim. How many of you, by a show of hands, know somebody who's been a victim? And by the way, I would underline show of hands here. I meant to underline that because every time that you're asking what we call a participation question, which that first bullet point there is an example of that, or the first question there, how many of you, by a show of hands, have ever known someone who's a victim of identity theft? You're not looking for someone to verbalize an answer. You're just looking for people to participate, raise their hand. Bill asked a couple of those. How many of you are married? And then he asked, on the identity theft, he asked, I typed it out here, who's been hearing a lot about identity theft? Same thing. All that is participation. Well, if you want participation, just adding those 5 words, by a show of hands, is a great way. It'll double the number of people that raise their hand. Here's a couple others questions here that work really well. Now, these are not participation questions. These are direct questions. So these are questions where you would actually be looking for an answer. Why would you want an attorney to review a contract before you sign it? And what I might do on that is pick someone that looks nice. I'm not going to pick on the person that's in the back folding their arms with a grumpy face. I'm going to pick the lady that looks nice and say, and I say lady, not that I couldn't pick a gentleman, but there's usually at least one nice lady in every presentation. There's one nice person. And I might pick on her and say, ma'am, do you mind if I ask you a question? Why would you want an attorney to review a contract before you sign it? I've used that in countless enrollments. And what makes that a great question is they'll answer, and whatever they say is a correct answer. Now, there are different answers to it. People will say different things, but that's never backfired. I've never gotten a bad answer on that. So whatever they say, your answer is that's exactly right. And then you just move on. But it breaks up the ebb and flow of the room. It gets people back focused on you. When you pick one person and ask them a question, think about whose attention you have when you do that. And the answer is you have that person's attention, but you also have everyone else's attention because they're thinking, oh, he might call on me next, or she might call on me next. So it's asking great questions is a great way to, again, kind of break up the room, get interactive with people, get them participating. But these are great questions in that they don't lose control. Another one, why would you want a ticket not to go on your record? Now, when he got to the tickets, Bill asked a participation question, which was, how many of you agree that we already spend too much on our auto insurance, our car insurance? And that's fine too. Again, it would get people participating and it would not lose control. So there are several different examples that I've heard. And another one that he asked that's not on the screen here, I'll just point to again because I've used this question. What do you think is the number one reason why people don't use attorneys? We all have legal issues, but why don't people use attorneys more? And then I pause, and people will say it costs too much, or it's expensive, or they'll rub their fingers together for the money symbol, right? And I'll say, yeah, that's exactly right. It's expensive. The average cost of an attorney is over $300 an hour. But again, I like asking great questions in an enrollment. Here are just some examples. Be real careful with the questions that you ask, though, because, again, most questions are not great. Most questions could backfire, and they're not good questions. And so I'm giving you some examples here of questions that are great. Another tip for your enrollments, and this would go for a decision maker meeting as well, but focus on benefits instead of features. And the easy difference there is that features is what it is and benefits is what it does. Features is what it is and benefits is what it does. So to illustrate this, let's look at this example of a chair. And this is where I wish that we were a little bit more interactive on this webinar, but because I would ask you, what are some features of this chair? And then what are the benefits of this chair? And since we're not, I don't have you unmuted here, I'll just kind of go through this, but I just want you to think about that for a second. What are some features of this chair? And what are some benefits of this chair? Features, again, being what it is, benefits, what it does. Well, some features of this chair might be that it's that the frame is made of solid wood. That's a solid wood construction. Or a feature might be the padded seat and the padded back of the chair. A feature might be that it's a shorter backrest. Or a feature might be the dark espresso colored wood. Now, none of those are benefits. In our mind, we tend to automatically start connecting those with benefits, but everything that I just mentioned there is a feature. None of those are benefits. Again, features is what it is. The benefits is what it does. So let's talk about the benefits of some of those things. Why does it matter that it's made out of solid wood? And the benefit is you don't have to worry when you sit on it that it's going to fall down, that it's going to fall apart. It's durable. It's going to last a long time. Now, that's not necessarily a benefit. What would be a benefit is this is a chair that you could pass down to your grandchildren. It's going to last forever. That's talking about what it does, and that's connecting with people. This is a chair that you can sit in for hours and never be uncomfortable because it's got the padded seat and the padded back. The padded seat and the padded back are the features. The fact that you can sit in it for hours and not be uncomfortable, that's the benefit. The fact that it's espresso colored, that's the feature, but it's a benefit. Now, that might be a benefit to some and not to others. If someone had an oak colored office, this probably wouldn't look that great. But if someone had an office where an espresso or gray, padding or gray fabric rather, an espresso colored frame would match, then it becomes a benefit. So kind of keep that in mind too. When you're talking benefits, you got to talk about things that are benefits for everyone. I just wanted to kind of point out the chair because the chair is a good example of features versus benefits. When I say, tell me about this chair, most people talk features. I don't know why, but that's where our mind tends to gravitate to. And we've got to think bigger than that. I need you to be talking about benefits. Well, in the world of LegalShield, we have a lot of different features. Unlimited legal advice, identity restoration, full identity monitoring, an attorney writes a letter, makes a phone call on your behalf, uncontested divorce coverage, on and on and on and on. But what I'm asking our associates to do is to get beyond those features and talk about the benefits of those features. And one phrase that you can see on your screen there that will help you do that, 3 simple words, what that means. If you'll just say what that means kind of repeatedly throughout your presentation, it will naturally get you talking more about benefits than features. So for example, one of the features of the legal plan is unlimited advice. What that means is anytime that you have a legal question, you can pick up the phone and speak to an attorney and not have to wonder about what your rights are, but have the peace of mind of knowing that you know exactly what your rights are. One of the features of the identity theft plan is where it says on your brochure, identity restoration. What that means is if you actually become a victim of identity theft, you won't have to do the work to clean up the mess. You'll have a licensed investigator that will come in and do all the phone calls, do all the paperwork, do all the legwork, do all the affidavits, everything that you would normally have to do, they do it on your behalf so you don't have to worry about doing it. You can avoid all that stress. You hear some of this emotional language that I'm using here? Bill Stovall did that very organically in his presentation. I like how he talked about they'll work with the FTC and the DMV, and he used some of those initials, the IRS. Again, it portrays how overwhelming identity theft can be for a victim. And I think he may have even used that word, overwhelmed. But he certainly portrayed that through his description. What that means, if you'll just say those 3 magic words kind of throughout your presentation, it will help you naturally transition from what's on the brochure, which is the feature, to what is this going to do for the people that you're talking to. That's the benefit. And that's what WIIFM stands for. That's my joke is everyone is tuned into the same radio station, WIIFM. It stands for what's in it for me, because that's what people care about. At the end of the day, that's why people buy this plan. That's why a decision maker gives you permission to come talk to his or her employees, is they have to feel like there's something in it for them. And focusing on benefits answers that question, what's in it for me? Another point, well, you can see here, break the ebb and flow. I've been talking about that. Again, people's minds tend to ebb and flow. They're focused on you, then they're not, then they are, then they're not. And so a great presenter does things intentionally throughout his or her presentation to bring the audience back to them. We talked about pauses can do that, humor can do that, questions can do that, raising the volume or inflection of your speech can do that. When you get quiet, that helps do it as well. But all of those things are ways to kind of break the ebb and flow and get people back to you. This bullet point here that says undersell and overdeliver. I think Bill did a great job at that in his presentation. You'll notice he didn't cover every feature of the plan. There were things that LegalShield does that he did not necessarily get into. There are features of the ID Shield product that he didn't necessarily get into. He covered enough to get people interested and to answer that question, what's in it for me? But he didn't get into too much detail. Sometimes we can oversell by getting people to think that this is going to do things that it does not. And I hope that you notice one of the things that he said is, unfortunately and obviously, for this low price, we're not going to be able to do everything, cover every legal situation 100%. And that's where this 25% discount comes in. And he talked about things like contested divorce or bankruptcy or a DUI, that even for those things, he said, you'd be able to get a 25% discount. Pointing that out as a way to sell this benefit correctly and not oversell it, because my philosophy has always been undersell it and then let the law firm overdeliver. If someone gets more than they think they're going to get, then they're thrilled. But if they get anything less than what they think, they cancel. and they talk badly about it at the water cooler as well. That's where we as an associate, we have to do a good job of underselling and over-delivering. Now, my final point, and then we'll get to Rachel, we're going to have time, which I'm excited about, is that we have to develop a powerful and assumptive close. Now, you'll hear Rachel close differently than Bill. Bill, his goal is to get the paperwork signed that day. The presentation that Rachel is doing is one that you might use in an environment where they don't support having people sign up the same day. Now, for her, it was because she did this via a webinar. So she was having people fill out their forms and then turn them in. But you might use a similar close like at a teacher meeting, a school. Sometimes schools, they're real hesitant to have them close the same day. The key is you want to have a powerful and assumptive close. And whatever it is that you need them to do, you need to make that clear. Now, I'm of the opinion that 90% of the enrollments that you do, you want them to fill out their paperwork and turn it in that day. And I do that, not necessarily, I don't always use the whole close, but I do expect them to fill out their paperwork that day. And one way that I do that is that final bullet point there. I give the employees a reason to sign up today. So I'll do a drawing for a $50 gift card, or I'll go buy little travel mugs and give one out to everybody that signs up. Something to give them a reason to sign up today. Because I'm of the opinion that in 90% of the groups that you do, if they walk out of that room with their paperwork in hand, most of them will not come back. Now, are there exceptions to that? Absolutely. Again, some of those groups where they're predominantly thinkers, engineers, architects, that kind of group, then I don't necessarily push for closing that day because they do come back and they do turn them in. But you got to give them a deadline if that's the case. Teachers, another one where sometimes they're real big on, we don't want to have our teachers feel pressured. That's fine. I'm going to give them a deadline and they have to turn them back in, by Friday of this week. Now, some teachers groups you can get away with having them fill it out right then and there. And I do that as often as I can, because that's the highest percentage enrollment is when you get them to do it right then and there. As far as the notes on the screen here, I like having a pre-close, which what that is something that you're going to say right before you get into your close. What you want to avoid is getting toward the end of your presentation and you're sitting there wondering, did I cover everything? Is there anything else I need to cover? And you kind of, pause and you stall. What that communicates is nervousness and anxiety about the close. And if people feel like you're anxious about the close, that you're nervous about the close, they're going to be anxious and nervous about the close. So I want that to flow very smoothly from my presentation to getting them writing. And the way that I found to do that is I had a pre-close. My pre-close is talking about the law firm. So I'll say, one of the best parts about this plan here in the state of Texas is we have the Ross and Matthews law firm. And I'll give a couple bullet points like Bill did about his North Carolina firm. I'll give a couple bullet points about that law firm. And that was always my cue to go right into my close from my pre-close. Now, you don't have to use the law firm as your pre-close. Maybe restoration is your pre-close, or maybe the fact that this is portable is your pre-close, but something that you get to kind of last in your presentation and that you can smoothly go from that to now, if everyone will take out their forms, there's a couple things I need you to do. And you heard kind of Bill do that as well. I'm also a big fan of when you're closing, and this is the case when you're getting people signed up, we call it you've got to stall the close. And what that means is you've got to keep yourself busy. So what you want to avoid is saying, now folks, go ahead and fill out your paperwork, and then you're standing there in the front of the room looking around, and people are looking back at you and they're not writing, and it's this awkward feeling. And I'll tell you what, they don't like the awkward silence. So what will typically happen is someone will say, well, do we have to do this today, or can we think about it? So to avoid that, I want to stay busy while people are signing up. So I'll do like what Bill did. I'll actually take them through the application and show them kind of, one line at a time. And I'm staying busy while I do that. I'm not rushing it, and I'm talking slowly so they don't feel pressured. But I'm not allowing too much space for dead silence, because I want to avoid that awkward silence. So I might say, everyone take out your form. At the top, if you'll go ahead and write today's date, today is 09/03/2019. By September, I'm finally saying 2019. I was 2018 the first 6 months of this year, but 2019. And then if you will come down and fill in your first name, and it's your first legal name. So if you go by a nickname, go ahead and put your legal name. And you hear how I'm talking? I'm not pausing. There's no awkward silence there. But yet I'm not rushing it. I'm speaking slowly. I'm giving them time to actually fill in what I'm talking about. Now, when I go through the form, here's my next move, is I'm immediately going to start passing out packets. Now, I don't use the actual packets that LegalShield sells. I buy the individual components, which is like the will questionnaires and the car decals. And I'm going around the room handing those to people that are filling out their form. And that's kind of my trade, is I'll give them the will questionnaire, the car decal, maybe a gift if I'm handing out mugs or whatever, in exchange for their form. And me being busy doing that gives people a chance, if they are fence sitters, to go ahead and sign up. And plus, once they see me handing things out, then that's when they're going to sign up. But the real key is it keeps me busy so that I'm not just standing there for them to say, can I do this later? That's what I'm trying to avoid here. So anyway, I hope that is helpful. Okay, we've got time here to listen to Miss Rachel Lawton, and we're going to listen to her presentation, and then we'll have about 10 minutes at the end to kind of recap it. Now, this is recorded, so I'm going to pull up here. I'm going to have to play the audio and then the video at the same time. Oops, actually, I need the conference in this line. Hold on just one second. Well, sorry, guys. Give me one more second here. I'm going to conference that in. Okay, I'm back, and I should have this ready to go here, so I'm going to try to play it. And you'll be able to see, this was a presentation that she did via webinar, so you'll be able to see her slides too, and we'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But hopefully you can hear it and see it. If for some reason you can't, just put that in the questions panel and we'll try to address it. But here we go. Let's see if we can get this to work.
Great. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this brief overview of a couple of your voluntary plan options that you have through the school. We're really excited to be here with you this morning, and just grateful that you took some time out of your day to learn about these plan benefits. We do also have some new updates to your plan. So if you are currently participating in these benefits, we're going to give you just kind of a wide range of an overview along with some of the plan updates. Now, you should have also received a couple of attachments in the email that came out, and I'm just going to pop those open really quickly. I would encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to go ahead and print those off. One is just simply going to be your summary of benefits sheet. It is a one-page document. It looks just like this. On the left-hand side, you're going to see the legal plan description in the purple section. And on the right-hand side, you're going to see in the blue section your identity theft protection benefit. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom here, you'll see your plan options and your payroll deduction amount. The second attachment that you would have received is the enrollment form. This is simply required, the yellow highlighted areas here on the document for enrollment purposes. So we'll walk you through that towards the end of the webinar. We will also have time for Q&A. So please feel free, if throughout you do have questions, you can go ahead and pop them into the chat box here, and we'll make sure to get to answering each of those questions. So as we get started here, my name is Rachel Lawton. I am your benefits representative for your legal and ID Shield plan benefits. Should you or your family have any questions regarding these plan options, you can always feel free to reach out to me direct. I'm here to help you answer any questions, to help you activate your benefits, whether it be now, today, or into the future. You can always feel free to reach out. I'm definitely here to serve you. So as we get started, I just want to let you know that these plan benefits are 100% voluntary. It is completely up to you whether you choose to participate or not. And really, my goal and task here this morning is just to get you educated on what you have available so that you can make an informed decision for yourself and for your family. Now, a couple key things to keep in mind. When you go to use these plan benefits, there's really no red tape. And what we mean by that is it's very easy to use. You'll never have to worry about filling out a claim form or paying a deductible or copay or extra service fees, nothing like that. You can just simply use your plan benefits as often as you like. Your rates are actually locked in for the lifetime of your plan. So because you have this as part of your benefit package, you have awesome reduced rate pricing that actually locks in for life for you. Also, should you ever choose to leave employment for any reason, you can take the benefits with you when you go. They're fully portable, and again, you'd be locked into those rates for the lifetime of your plan that you have through the school. So pretty awesome there. Now we're going to go ahead and start on the left-hand side of your summary page in the purple section. This is your legal plan. And really, just quickly, what your legal plan does is it gives you unlimited access to qualified attorneys for everyday life stuff. Again, no additional service fees or copays or anything like that. You can simply tap into your legal rights, know exactly what your legal rights are in any given situation. It is fully confidential as well. So anytime you call into your law firm, you don't have to worry about there being a report sent to anybody. It's fully confidential between you and the attorney that you are working with. So we do have a dedicated provider law firm that is designated to serving you. So anytime that you call in for service, you'll always be calling directly into your provider law firm. Now, our provider firm here for the state of Minnesota, they're located downtown Minneapolis. They have about 40 practicing attorneys within the firm, and each of those have different designations. So let's say, for example, maybe you have a question related to your estate plan, or maybe you're looking to refinance on a mortgage and you need to talk with an attorney about that. Maybe you have a property dispute with a neighbor, or you're dealing with a lease agreement, a landlord or a tenant situation. Maybe you're having a struggle with the warranty service contract that you purchased and they're not doing the job right, or you've partnered with a contractor to do some work on your home and maybe they're not completing the job to their best ability. Whatever the situation might be, you just simply call directly into your law firm. Your call is then routed to the attorney inside the firm that has experience in the area of law that you want to talk about. They are contracted to return your phone call within just 4 hours. So it is same day turnaround. So you don't have to wait, days and weeks on end for answers and help to your question. Just really giving you that peace of mind and guidance to make informed decisions with everyday life stuff. Additionally, they will write letters and make phone calls on your behalf if they believe it's in your best interest. So I'll give you just a quick story that I shared at some of our in-service meetings here recently. We had a participant that had purchased a warranty service contract when they purchased their home, and that was for all the appliances in their home. If you've ever purchased a warranty contract for maybe some appliances or your vehicle, this couple did that, and unfortunately they ended up needing to utilize that warranty service, and the warranty service company was not upholding to their end of the deal. They were going through frustrations, making multiple phone calls, trying to get through to supervisors, and at the end of the day, they were really just getting the runaround. So they ended up contacting the provider law firm. The law firm wrote a letter and actually made a phone call on their behalf as well. And they ended up with a brand new refrigerator. They didn't have to deal with any more hoops. It saved them a little over $1,000 in one use of their legal plan. So, this is not just for criminal stuff or the big hairy deals that we go through in life. It's really for everyday life stuff. And if they can help, they will. This is all part of your plan benefit. They'll also review any documentation or contracts. I'll give you just a quick example here. We have a member that's out of the Plymouth, Minnesota area. They had re-signed on a lease agreement with this landlord, and they ended up sending the lease agreement into the law firm to have it reviewed. It was a 14-month lease, and the attorney found an additional $25 charge that was added to their lease for parking on the property. That was $25 times 14 months, a little over $300. With one contract review from the law firm, they were able to get that charge waived. They then signed the lease agreement and saved them that $300 with one contract review. So, whatever the situation is in life, you just need sound legal counsel. This is what your legal plan does for you. And one of the things that we're really talking in depth about this month, it is National Will Month, the month of August, and a part of your plan benefits, all included at no additional charge, is your will preparation. So your provider law firm will fully draft your estate planning document. That includes your last will and testament, living wills, healthcare directives, financial powers of attorney for both you and your spouse at no additional cost. It is 100% covered. They will even update and amend those documents on an annual basis at your request. So, as life changes, you can get them updated without worrying about, paying that extra service fee. It's totally included. And I'll just tell you from personal experience, this is a huge peace of mind. Our estate planning documents aren't really in order for ourselves. it's really that lasting love letter that we leave to our families. And so if this is something that's maybe been on your to-do list for a while, you have an awesome benefit that is there and allows you to get that done in a very quick process. Now I'm going to direct your attention to the side of your summary sheet on the blue section. This is your identity theft protection plan. We have really beefed up your benefits here on this end of your program. You know, we've had these benefits in place through the school for a little over 5 years now, and unfortunately, we are seeing so much going on in our world today in terms of data breaches and identity theft issues. In fact, identity theft has been the top consumer complaint filed with the Federal Trade Commission for over 16 years. You know, there are more victims that are spending an exorbitant amount of time dealing with these issues. And, you know, unless we're living under a rock, we keep on hearing about all these breaches that are occurring every single day. You know, the Equifax data breach was the largest data breach known in U.S. history. It compromised over 146 million of us with our personal and private information. And then we're just coming off the heels of another incredibly large and massive data breach with Capital One. I guess the stark reality today is that it's really up to us to be proactive with our information. And so your LegalShield benefit is here to help you do that. It really works in 3 ways. You have a very robust monitoring program that just allows you to be in control of your personal and private information. It allows you to be proactive. We've added in about 18 new features on your LegalShield monitoring platform. Not just monitoring the stuff that ends up on a credit report. You know, the common misconception that we do hear very frequently is that most folks believe that identity theft is a credit-related situation. And although it can be, we find statistically that less than 17% of all reported identity theft issues actually appears on a credit report. So here with your LegalShield plan benefits, they're monitoring things like your social security number, passport information, driver's license information, also your social media accounts. Sometimes we share things even just in creating an account there that leaves us vulnerable. A couple of the new additions is a real-time sex offender search that tracks any sex offender that is moving into the area. Also, you'll be able to monitor your investment accounts as well, many other items that are included inside that plan benefit for you. And that's really the first tier of coverage. The second item is your unlimited consultation. So let's say maybe you get a weird bill in the mail or find out you've been part of one of these data breaches, you lose your wallet, whatever that situation might be. You can always contact your LegalShield advisors. They are there to consult with you, to look into the situation and see what might be going on there. And then the third and really the most important piece of your LegalShield benefit, this is really where the rubber meets the road, how your benefit sets itself apart from any other program that's out there that maybe you hear about in the news or on marketing sites, or might even be something at your bank or credit card. This is really the big picture and the huge difference, and that is your restoration. What that means to you is, should you or a covered family member become a victim of identity theft, they're not just going to mail you a kit to tell you how to clean up the mess. They'll actually assign you a team of licensed investigators to take over that case and work on your behalf as long as it takes to clean up that mess for you. Now, the family coverage is going to include you and your spouse, children up to the age of 26 years old if they're full-time in college or still living in the home. We also have the single plan option. These are your payroll deduction amounts. So for the single plan with the legal and LegalShield, it's just $13.95. And for that family coverage, it's just $16.95. So just a couple bucks more to cover the whole entire family. Lastly, you have an awesome member perks program. It is a corporate discount program, and it is free to you. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really just allows you to save money on everyday life stuff. from clothing and apparel to going out to eat, or maybe staying in a hotel. You can actually save 40 to 60% on hotels nationwide as part of your perks plan. You want to catch a ball game, take the kiddos out to a movie, or save money on your cell phone coverage or your homeowner's insurance policy. You can do that every single month. These are free to you. They're called your member perks, and they really just allow you to save money on everyday life purchases. You can use them as much as you like. You'll actually get a private portal upon enrollment. You'll create a username and password, and that'll then open up that portal to you. Now, your plan benefits are fully mobile-centric. You do have a mobile app. You can just download that app, and it allows you to really have easy access into your benefits. You don't have to use a mobile app if you don't like that, but it is accessible and there for you. Allows you to track your credit score daily. Your member perks are fully included there as well. So it just allows you to use that easily. Now, your action item here, your benefits take effect on the first of the month. So it is timely right now to make sure that you get your enrollment form complete.
All right. Well, that was Rachel Lawton doing a presentation, and that was an actual webinar that she did with a group of employees this past month. She was kind enough to share that with us. What did you think? What did you get from Rachel's presentation? And again, I'm going to go back to our question panel here. Let's see here. And also feel free, we've got about 10 minutes left here, just to ask any questions that you have about the enrollment as well, I think would be great. Jennifer Stovall, thank you for clarifying what spend down is, because I was saying spend down, so that I appreciate your clarification on that. That's when is the Medicaid spend down requirements on a person's financial assets before coverage starts. So that is helpful. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Any thoughts that you have on Rachel's presentation, please share them through the question panel. David asked a great question about time on a presentation. Now, I tend to subscribe to what my brother said, which is every minute past 15 minutes that you go, you're probably buying back applications. So really striving to keep that within 15 minutes is an important key. Now, frankly, if you're somebody like Rachel or Bill, you could probably go a little beyond that because they're captivating. But again, just really be careful. 20 minutes for sure is too much. But I think anything over 15. Now, part of that too is dictated sometimes by how much time the group is going to give you. And if you're talking at a staff meeting, for example, and they say you need to be 10 minutes, then your presentation really needs to be about 7 minutes. And so you've got enough time to close. That's a big mistake that I see people make, is they spend whatever their allotted time is, they spend most of it on, or they spend all of it on the presentation, and they don't leave enough time to close. Or they'll only leave 30 seconds to close, and you cannot close in that short amount of time. I love it. Great comments here coming back, just that Rachel did a great presentation. Obviously, I agree. I think her presentation is fantastic. Remember, she's one of our presenters in Salt Lake City at the Solutions in Action class, so make sure that you're signed up to attend that class. That's on Thursday, October 3rd, I think from 9 to 3 that day, if I'm not mistaken. And we start that class out. We're going to start that class out by Rachel doing that enrollment presentation, and she'll do it live, engaging the group. But I think, frankly, you saw a lot of what we already talked about today. You saw her use the emotional language. You heard her stories. You heard, her connecting. You heard her talking about benefits, about features. At the close, you'll notice she went right through the application and took them through, showed them how to fill it out. Now, again, that's a group that she's doing via webinar, which is not the same thing as if you were live in front of a group. And I'm sure that she got a pretty good sign-up rate, but I'm sure it's not as good as if she was able to get in front of that group live. And that's why we always recommend, if you can get in front of that group live, it's always the best thing. One of the things that we'll talk about in our webinars that we do sometimes is I'll talk about, what if you have a group that has, they tell you, we've got 50 employees here at our corporate office locally, we've got another 40 employees at our Dallas office, and then we've got 65 people that are just kind of scattered throughout the country. How would you enroll that group? And the first answer that most people give is, I would do a webinar. And what I'm trying to get them to see is, a webinar is fine, but you always start with the local employees and go do a live presentation with them, because that's where you're going to get your best sign-up rate. And then if they've got 40 people in Dallas, figure out a way to do that. Either get somebody in Dallas and partner with them, split it 50-50, or buy a plane ticket and go to Dallas, assuming that you don't live here in Dallas. But go do the groups as much as you possibly can. And then after you've finished with the live presentations, then do a webinar for everybody else. You'll never sign up as many people through a webinar as you will a live actual presentation. So, very good. Let me, Senora, and I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly, Senora Dantzler, but she talks about, even on the webinar, she covered what they were looking at the very beginning. And again, on her close, said you need to fill this out, print it out, fill it out, get it back to HR. You notice that she used kind of the deadline approach for doing that, which again is fine. One thing that I did notice that was a little bit different on her presentation, she had them write the date as the first of the following month. So like today, if she was doing that presentation, she might have to wait until October 1st. It's totally fine to do that. In fact, I prefer making benefits available on the first of the following month. That gives you some control on which month that's going to count for. And if it's a paper application, you can send some in this month, some in next month. If you want to, qualify for ED both months, sandbag some sales, something like that. If you sign up people and the benefit is effective today, you can't really save them until October. You can't wait that long to process them. I mean, for sure, you really shouldn't wait more than a couple of days to process them. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at when to make groups effective. If you make them effective the first of the following month, it gives you control on which month you want them to count for. If they were effective October 1st, but you sent them in September, they would process at the very end of September and count towards September business. And so, again, it gives you that control. If you wanted them to count for October, just wait till October and then send them in there. And then what I was going to point out is she has them put that first of the following month. You could put today's date and still make them effective October 1st. So you don't have to do that, but I like that because, again, it gives people a reason to pay attention to her. It's a little bit different than what you would expect. It's not way off to where they're nervous about it, but it's a little bit different, but it allows her to emphasize that point and say, okay, I need everyone to put the first of the following month. And again, just kind of get attention back on her, get people following along. And as as that kind of point, I think it's a great tactic to use. So, all right. And Yvette brings up a question here that I wanted to point out as well. I mentioned that we would talk about this before we ended here, but on the webinar, on the PowerPoint, people say all the time, do I need to use a PowerPoint in a presentation? I mean, you saw Rachel had a PowerPoint that went along with her webinar, and I think it's just the PowerPoint that you can download. Most of that is on LS Engage as far as just a standard presentation. You don't have to use a PowerPoint on a presentation. Like I've done hundreds, maybe thousands of presentations with no PowerPoint. I mean, just standing up in front of the room and I am the PowerPoint. You just look at me. And I'm using pieces, I'm using collateral. Whether I have a PowerPoint or not, I always want to put something in their hand. That's what makes an intangible service tangible, is the material that I'm putting in their hand. But again, if you want to use a PowerPoint, that's fine. If they have the setup, Sometimes it's not worth it, because you're in a place where they don't really have a setup for a PowerPoint, and it's more trouble than it's going to provide any help. So it's not necessary. If it helps you, then that's fine, but you don't have to do it. You don't have to have a PowerPoint. So kind of keep that in mind. I've done a lot of presentations with. I've done a ton of presentations without. Either way, it works. What's more important than your PowerPoint is how engaging are you in your presentation. Now, as a reminder here, here's what I'm looking. I'm looking for a couple courageous souls to volunteer to do a live presentation on next week's webinar. And if we don't have any volunteers, then I'll volunteer somebody that I'll ask you if I'll reach out to a couple people. But I think that we'll have some volunteers. And frankly, maybe you've already emailed me. I haven't been checking my email here lately, but we won't have time for everybody, obviously. But I do want to hear a couple of people, and I'm gonna critique you, and I'm gonna show you how I like to thin slice a presentation, really break it down to where it's just we want to look at every little aspect, and with the goal of getting better, with the goal of improving. So if you'll just email me, mike@mikeriches.com, and of course, don't forget to keep reporting your activity, reportmyactivity.com, as part of this advanced training as well. A huge thank you to everybody who participated. I really want to thank Bill Stovall for sharing that excellent presentation, and Rachel Lawton for sharing her incredible presentation as well. Thank you to all of you for joining here. I appreciate your time and hope that this has been helpful. Of course, if I can help you in any way, shape, or form, please don't hesitate to reach out, as I would absolutely love to be able to do so. God bless every one of you, and we'll talk to you soon.